Hello, Algebra 2 students. I hope you are doing well. I hope the last few lessons have been going well. We're going to take a brief pause here because I've had a lot of people email, FaceTime, Hangouts, things like that, and ask me, like, Miss Jebs, I'm still getting confused about how you know what leg is what. And like I'm getting really confused, and I need you to please go over that. A lot of you said on that little Google form that you were supposed to work on Friday, like you're doing pretty well, but maybe doing a little bit of a review. And so I was like, I want to do one more lesson and then we can kind of review because we're going to try to put everything together eventually here in some way or another. And so please remember, it's very important to know what angle you're looking at. And that's the only way I could ever say opposite or adjacent. But right away, so I'm going to turn around on me on this triangle I have here, and I know sometimes when it's just sitting there like that, it gets a little bit of a glare, so I'm going to tilt it forward enough that it's not much glare. If I am on the right angle, I have to go across from the right angle, and this one I'm going to write definitely is hypotenuse, right? That one will never change. That is going to be the hypotenuse. That is guaranteed because it is across from the right angle. Now, I'm going to use an example of, let's say, that when we look at the first problem, our angle is marked down here. Now, if our angle is marked down here, I want you to pretend that this angle that I just made the letter A, just because I need an A or whatever letter you want to use to help you out, what two legs, one of them is already written as a hypotenuse, what else is right next to A? Since this is right next to A, that would be adjacent. Okay, some people like to find adjacent first. Put your finger on A, put your finger on that star, and go across the triangle from that. That would be opposite. But I know where people get confused. That's not always the one that's labeled. They're twisted around. But if you always think about that being the case, that you can always put whatever, like you can put a letter on the outside if you want, and say what's right next to that, what's across from that. So let's say for another example, instead, there is a value that's up here in this corner. Well, if that's the corner, let's pretend this is A. And I'm telling you, if you always want to call it angle A so you know what you're doing, what is next to A? The hypotenuse and this guy, the one across the top, meaning this time in purple, if it's showing up okay because this is a new purple marker, I would write adjacent right there. And again, if I would put my finger on the star and draw across from it, across would be opposite. So those of you who are having trouble finding opposite and adjacent, hopefully that helps you a little bit. If you are still confused, please try to reach out by me so you and I can have a video chat of some form or another so we can get going and know what's going on. Now, if I was you and you are like, Miss Jabs, we've already been doing this a few days, I know what's going on, you may probably like minimize the video, put it in the background, and already be working on the homework for today as I'm talking. But you probably want to be listening because there's one of these that I would like you to do as your points for the day that you're going to submit on Google Classroom. Okay, it's going to be a Google Doc today, not an email today. There should be something that's already attached to this, and we are going to work you're going to work through a few problems like that and figure out that way. All right, so the first example I have for us is not going to be one that you write or upload onto Google Docs. I'm using a Post-it note to help us out, to really like help people realize why I might want to use one trig function or the other. And so if you would please copy this down right now. And I know I used a random letter Y in this, okay? And that's not usually what we use. But would you please look, according to 43 degrees, actually 43 degrees is not the first angle we should look at. The first angle we should look at is the right angle. Please look at the right angle and go across from it. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some of you who did not label the hypotenuse right, and I would very, very, very strongly encourage you to label the hypotenuse first. Okay, so the hypotenuse is listed right there. Now let's look at our 43, and if we need to put an A here or whatever angle letter you want to call, we could put that there, and this would be right next to it. So I'm actually going to write all 3 letters for both of those, because the 3 letters I have for both of those are adjacent, ADJ, and hypotenuse, HYP. So if I look through my list right here, there should only be one ratio that has adjacent over hypotenuse. And again, I didn't write SOHCAHTOA today, but nope, opposite, can't use it. Adjacent, hypotenuse, that's the one we need to use. So I am going to write cosine, and then I'm going to write that theta symbol. Please remember, theta always has to be an angle. There was a couple of you sometimes who had things switched around, like you were putting angles where lengths should be and lengths in where the angle should be. I'm then going to write a fraction, and I'm going to write adjacent over hypotenuse, because that way I just know what we're supposed to start with. So if we look at this picture, what is the value of the angle? Oh, there it is. Sorry, guys. The value of the angle is 43 degrees. So I'm going to write the cosine of 43 degrees equals, what's the value of the adjacent side? 17.3. And what's the value of the hypotenuse? What do you know? That's my unknown, y. I'm calling this one y this time. Please remember, and I've said this several times, and it's okay for you to write this in your notes. The unknown is in the denominator. If the unknown is in the denominator, I am just going to switch the spot of those two to help me solve this. And so y will equal 17.3 over cosine of 43. And again, please maybe be a little bit careful when you're typing that in a calculator, knowing the order that you have to type it in, because every calculator is a little bit different, and if you choose to type it in the wrong way, you will get the wrong answer. And so we get y equals 12.7, because we have to round up because that's a side. 12.7, y equals 12.7. Now, if you noticed when I started doing this, I had that piece of paper over there because I did all this work and I figured out why. But if I would move this piece of little post-it paper, post-it note right down there, you're like, all that stuff you did, Miss Jabs, is pointless. I don't know the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is covered up. I know my word adjacent is getting kind of covered up by my work right there. But would you please go across from 43? If we go across from 43, that would make this the opposite. So now I have opposite and adjacent. This is opposite and hypotenuse. Can't use it. That one had adjacent hypotenuse. So I'm going to use tangent. Guys, every time you want to do a different problem in the same problem, reassess what you have and reassess what you can use. So we're going to write tangent of theta equals opposite over adjacent. And then we're going to look through our values. What is the value of the angle? Yep, it is still 43 degrees, of course. The opposite is x. This time we don't know that. The adjacent is 17.3. When your unknown is in the denominator, you multiply to solve. When your unknown is in the denominator, you multiply to solve. And it would probably work best in whatever calculator you use if you type that for 17.3 in first. So if we type in 17.3, tangent of 43, 17.3, tangent of 43 is 16.1. X approximately equals 16.1. All right? And so hopefully this is helping to clear a few things up for some of you. Please keep it simple. So when I give you a problem, if I was in class with you, I would call on somebody and say, do we want to solve for A first? Do we want to solve for B first? Do we want to solve for C first? So I'm going to be the one who has to call out what we solve for first, and that therefore all the other letters I am going to cover up. And you need to think about this triangle behind me and how you would use that to help you out. So I'm going to say we want to solve for B first. All right, since we want to solve for B first, I'm going to cover up C, and actually I have to take just a tiny bit of this paper. And so I'm going to cover up A. And so would you at first, because I don't think I showed you this one yet, would you just copy this down? And I know there's kind of a flap hanging there, just ignore that. Would you please copy that down? And then we're going to work on solving for B. So if we're going to solve for B, it looks like we know 58 degrees. Since we know, oh, no, what are we supposed to find first? So go to the right angle, go across from it. 17.8 is the hypotenuse. 17.8 is the hypotenuse. Go to your 58 and go across from it. That would give you B. B is across, so B is opposite. So it looks like to find B, I need to use opposite and hypotenuse. If you would look behind me, please. What ratio should you use if you have opposite and hypotenuse? So I am going to write down this sign of theta equals opposite over hypotenuse. Theta is the angle, which says 58 degrees. Opposite is our unknown. Oh, wait, so our unknown is in the numerator. How are we going to solve if our unknown is in the numerator? Very good. We multiply both sides. So on your calculator, you should type in 17.8. And then you're going to multiply that by the sine of 58. Sorry, guys, I couldn't remember what the angle was. It looks like our B is 15.1. Looks like B is 15.1. Now, I do want you guys to know what's going on. I do want you to know how to do this. And so I am going to ask you to work on your own to find part C. Hopefully you paused the video and we're waiting for me, but I'm going to talk all the way through it just to make sure people are still comfortable. I know we wrote opposite right there, but since I still have the 58, would you agree C is next to 58? So C would be adjacent. If you notice here, I'm pretending I didn't even find part B yet. So I just wrote that since I have adjacent, and the 17.8 was really, really important. So I've never let go of the fact that I have that. Adjacent and hypotenuse would be cosine. So I would want to find the cosine of theta, and that would be adjacent, over hypotenuse. Our theta, once again, was that 58 degrees I see there. Adjacent is what we don't know. Oh yeah, our unknown is in the numerator again, divided by 17.8. Guys, you are going to feel like you're doing a problem almost over again when you do this, because the last time we used 17.8 and multiplied it by something, but we switched what trig function we were doing here. And so C is going to approximately equal 9.4. The calculator actually says 9.4325629, 29. All right? But that's how we do that. Now, if this was the problem you were supposed to be working on, it looks like I have now found my two legs, but I have to find the third angle. Please don't forget the three angles of a triangle add to 180. So you could very simply on your calculator type in 180 minus 90 minus 58, pardon me, on that little break there. And so we would get 32 degrees. We would get 32 degrees. All right, so I know I said if you were pretty comfortable with this, you could probably like minimize it, whatever. I would like everybody to come back, please, at least for the first example that we do here, okay? And everybody on their Google Doc is going to type in and work through with me how we're going to find X. And so I covered everything, other things up. Go ahead and pause and copy down this triangle. That is a 14.7. And so we have these values right here, and we're going to try to find X first. Please remember X is an angle. Since X is an angle and we don't know it on our calculator, when we're using our calculator, we must use the inverse button. If we don't use the inverse button, it's not going to be right. All right, so let's look at X again, and let's think about Ms. Jab saying, oh yeah, all that stuff. We got a label. If we were to go across from the right angle, I actually have a Post-it note right there. I'm going to move it for just a minute, and I am going to write hypotenuse right there. See, wrote hypotenuse, but hypotenuse is not important right now. I can't use it, so I'm going to cover it up. Cover up hypotenuse Look at x, I gotta figure out my other two legs. This one is right next to it. So next to it would mean adjacent. And then if I put my finger on x and go across the circle, the triangle, excuse me, from it, that would be opposite. And so it looks like I want to use the ratio that has opposite and adjacent. So if you would please work on this on your own, you will type in the answer for x on your Google Doc. And if you are correct, you can just write, I was correct. If not, you'll need to write your error. But after you paused, I hope that you wrote down tangent of x equals 22.2 over 14.7. Not trying to be mean, that might be a mistake. Maybe you had those flipped around. Please remember, in order to solve when we're solving for that, we have to use the inverse button. And so please very carefully on your calculator, make sure you type that in correctly. But if you look at this, I did not write tangent inverse on this side, but that's how we got it to move to that side. So we're going to type in tangent inverse. And then you're going to type in that fraction. And when you do that work, it should tell you that the answer is 56 degrees. So x equals 56 degrees. Once again, go to your Google Doc and type in there, yep, I knew what I did. I got it wrong, but I know why I made a mistake. We are rounding these to the whole, right? Because it's a degree, round to the whole. All right, I'm going to kind of work in a very interesting way because now I'm going to uncover z. If you notice right here, z is another part of the triangle, and it's another angle. How do you find the angles? Yep, subtract from 180. So you don't need to type this in your Google Doc. But we just found that x was 56. So I'm going to subtract from 180 minus 90 minus 56. And z will equal 34 degrees. And so guys, now you could, if you would want, use almost any form you want. If you wanted to, you could use this red angle that I listed as 56 degrees and try to find the hypotenuse using that red angle of 56 degrees. You could use the adjacent leg. You could use the opposite leg. We know both of those. This is not written on our paper because this is in green. That's why I switched the colors. Green is 34 degrees. Your opposite and adjacent words would have to switch. This is not opposite of 34. So if you're going to pick 34, opposite is not 22. But this is your other point on Google Docs for the day. Hopefully things went a little bit better. And so you're going to answer two more things. Number one, yes, today's lesson helped out and I'm feeling better about trigonometry. And solve for y. Maybe you are already very, very familiar with it and you kind of minimized your YouTube and were just kind of listening to me in the background till I said go back and do that now. But there should be 3 things that you have written in your Google Doc now. Even if the second one is, Miss Jabs, I was fine and I could have done this without the lesson. And then solve for y, please. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I am available all day. I'm waiting to talk to you guys to see how I can help you. Thanks. Bye.